Вітаю всіх! Слава Ісусу Христу! Скажіть мені, будь ласка, вімкнути світло, певно, бажано? Ні? Ага, тоді в мене питання технічне, чи вімкнути світло для запису, бо ми будемо провадити сьогодні запис. Нема потреби. Добре, тоді ми будемо в такій обстановці. Отже, ще раз всіх вітаю. Вітаю, оскільки тут зібралися студенти першого курсу Artes Liberales, культурологи, історики, філологи. Вітаю вас зі вступом до Українського католицького університету. Бажаю вам плідного року, бажаю вам доброго початку навчання на нашій програмі. Бажаю, щоб ви відкрили для себе нові можливості і щоб ви створювали можливості для себе і для інших. Мене звати Олена Галета, і на програмі Artes Liberales я викладаю курс антропології. Як ви знаєте, спільний для всіх істориків, філологів і культурологів. Сьогодні ми маємо нагоду починати наш курс в особливий спосіб. Нашим гостем і лектором сьогодні є Кшиштоф Чижевський, поет, дослідник, президент фундації Пограниччя із міста Сейни у Польщі. Кшиштоф Чижевський також давній друг нашої програми. Сьогодні це не перша відкрита лекція, попередня відбулася 4 роки тому. І називалася вона «Ксенополіс». Йшлося про місто як спільноту, відкриту до іншого і навіть чужого. Поняття іншого – це ключове поняття в антропології, принаймні в соціокультурній антропології. Сьогодні знову мова буде йти і про іншого, і про чужого, і про культурні різниці, і про силу культури, але в іншому контексті. На жаль, у контексті повномасштабного вторгнення Росії до України. Мова лекції сьогоднішньої заявлена як англійська. Я сподіваюся, проблем із цим у вас не буде. Зараз я перейду на англійську, представлю ще раз Кшиштофа і тоді передам йому мікрофон. Хочу сказати, що ми маємо приблизно 1 годину і 20 хвилин для лекції і для розмови. Тому, будь ласка, слухайте уважно, думайте над питаннями, за змістом лекції, дотичними питаннями, на які ви маєте унікальну можливість почути унікальні відповіді не тільки від ваших викладачів. Отже, dear colleagues, it's my pleasure and honor to welcome Кшиштоф Чижевський, who is poet and writer, theater director and translator, editor. Кшиштоф Чижевський described himself as practitioner of ideas and animator of culture. He's president of Borderland Foundation from Сейни in Poland and director of the Center Borderlands of Arts, Culture and Nations. His book, Small Center of the World, was awarded by Tishner Prize. His another book, Toward Xenopolis, Visions from the Borderland, was awarded by the Ambassador of New Europe Prize. So the title of our today lecture is Culture and War. It's really short and it is telling a lot. So, dear Kshistov, please, the floor is yours.
Привіт. Thank you for this kind invitation. It's a privilege for me to be the lecturer of the opening of your program in your university. Not, as Olena mentioned, not the first time, and I hope not the last time. And the Borderland Foundation and our center is very much open also for the cooperation with you. Possibly in the future, we can have some common programs. My dream would be if you can visit us in a study visit or any other kind of cooperation, we are very, very much open to that. As you've heard, I decided to title my lecture Culture and War, which is a little bit risky for a person coming from Poland to talk about war in Ukraine rather than to listen. But in fact, the subtitle of my lecture is a Ukrainian lesson, and I will try to share with you some reflections on how I do read the tragedy of the war in Ukraine, connecting it with building new ideas, building philosophy out of that, and most predominantly sharing or thinking about the practical dimension of these ideas, what we can do as culture people, as humanists, to transmit this experience, this lesson into our life practices. And in a sense, it could also mean that knowing about the sacrifice Ukrainians contribute to the world today. So it's not easy to talk about culture when the war is ongoing. And you probably remember this ancient phrase that when war happens, the sirens of culture should silence, yes, should calm down, because the voice is to the soldiers, to the fighters. But my reflection will be in contrary to that. My belief is that culture is a very important front line going together with the war. And it's somehow also about to give sense to this sacrifice when you have people dying around you, when you have in your families, in your circles, people dying, sacrificing their life in the war. The question is what we can do to give sense to this death, what we can do not to read this world as an absurd one, as something what is going on like crazy, and there is no other way to express our feelings than to calm down and to keep silence, facing this tragedy. So my reflection is will be very much about what we can do, giving sense, giving opening the future, focusing on some practical things, facing the war. 4 years ago, when the war was ongoing, when I was lecturing here, but in this full dimension of the war we face today, more and more I think about this borderland between war and culture. And I'm very consciously using the word war, because the tendency since many years in the humanistic studies, in culture activities, was rather to avoid the war. We tended to use the word peace building. After Second World War Europe, we believe that the eternal Kantian peace is before us, that it will never happen again. But in fact, it was always with us. It was always ongoing. Only we were blind to that. After 1945, the historians counted that we had 19 days without war in the world. So it was always with us, and all the colonial empires collapse not as empires who decided to go to the peace or to give freedom, independence to the subdued nations, but they lost the wars in all cases. Never happened like in a peaceful way, attaining emancipation from the empire. Either it was in Indochina, in Africa, in Algeria, in Vietnam, everywhere, there was a victory of local people over the empire to gain independence and sovereignty. So never happened that the empire decided in a peaceful way that we will give you independence, freedom, and so on. So I read now that it was a kind of blindness or escape not to talk and think about the war in the context of our European values, our post-war, post-Second World War reality. So this is one of the points I want to make at the beginning. I put the war into the context of the humanistic cultural reflection and practice as a reality, which changes a lot. And you will see how it works. The second point I want to make is there is a sentence by Elias Canetti, a great writer, philosopher from former Habsburg Empire in Rustuk at the Danube bank. And once in his book Against Death, he wrote, "Wars are fought for war's sake. Until we acknowledge this, we will never fight them." What it means, how I read this sentence, "war are fought for war's sake," is that of course there are many reasons you can find in the situation that one country, one empire initiates the war with other state, like in the case of Russia towards Ukraine, that you may say there were some political reasons, there was a way, Putin wanted to keep the power, or there were some issues about natural resources, all these kinds, there is a reason to understand that. But this gives you not the full truth about the war, that there is a reason behind that there is a purpose or mission, that we want to achieve this or that. If it would be like that, there will be no truth of war in Canetti's words, because we can understand the war only when we acknowledge that the war is for the war's sake only. That the war is like something like evil, that there is no reason behind that. The evil is in our world, not because of any kind of reason or mission or purpose. When you keep, or when you find the purpose or sense of evil, there is no evil anymore. Evil in this naked shape and presence is only when it is for its sake only. Evil is when evil is done. Evil is when evil is in act for itself. There are sometimes, the animals are predators, as they should kill somebody to continue the life, like we human beings. Yeah, we always eat the life, but there are some animals, like, I don't know how it is in English, vedra, you know, this, which kills fish just for killing, not because she's hungry, not because she has any reason. There is, and we call it instinct for killing. Yeah, that she's, of course, she's not conscious about this. She's not responsible. She's animal. But when human being is doing it, just killing for to kill, yeah, making war for the war, that's an evil. There's something in us, in the world, which makes evil presence, and the war is the core for that. Because as Leszek Kołakowski is a Polish philosopher, probably once you will cross his reflections and books, that I think the greatest Polish philosopher in contemporary times, who was writing all the time about the evil and presence of evil. And it was a whole discussion he had with Western world. He was a professor of different Western universities in United Kingdom and United States, and was always contradiction was, and controversy around his philosophy was that he is talking about the devil as a real thing, which didn't exist in European philosophy in the 20th century. Yeah, we relativize the evil and the presence of the devil in the world. It was like a kind of abstraction. So Kołakowski was always saying that it is real, and how it operates, how it acts in the world is that he, as devil, as evil power, he don't have instruments for to act. Only through the humanity, only through the human beings, he can act in the world. So it doesn't mean that somebody in person, like any of us, or any nation, or any culture could be evil in the pure sense, but it can has inside the seed of evil. That's how evil is working. It's something we can have like a virus, yes, and it can use us as human beings, as a state, as a society, to act in the name of evil. Why I'm saying this at the beginning? Because for me, this is crucial to understand what is a connection between culture and war. Because we can find different definitions about what culture is, and we can argue on that, and you probably will have in your anthropology course different points of what culture is. But in my reflection here, there will be in a very simple way that culture is a way to fight with evil. This is one of my most important Ukrainian lessons as a culture person, that I understand more and more that I should honestly understand my culture activity as fighting with evil in that world, and finding different practices, workshops, tools, crafts to be effective in that way. That's why culture is needed in that world. Yes, because without culture, without the spiritual, moral dimension, you can't struggle, you can't overcome, you can't defeat the evil, and you can't be successful, victorious in the war. That's how it is so directly interconnected. In fact, and so culture as efficiency in struggle with evil, which is something evil as something real existing in our world. And I would translate this reflection in the language of Gandhi, Mahatma Gandhi, as ahimsa. You probably are familiar with this statement and the position Gandhi took facing the struggle with British Empire. Ahimsa was, we translated it in the Western language as non-violence, which I think is not the full truth about it. Himsa in Sanskrit, in the Hindu language, is evil. Ahimsa is no evil, struggling with evil. It's an opposition to evil, ahimsa. And the way Gandhi practiced ahimsa was in one moment of his life, like non-violence, putting the arm, the weapons aside, because he believes that it will be more effective in struggling with the evil of empire. But in a second part of his life, he became a leader of quitting England or quitting British Empire Party and the revolutionary movement, which used military weapons to struggle with the enemy of the empire. Because at that moment, he understood that it would be the most effective in the way of struggling with evil. How we translated Gandhi in the post-war 1945 Europe was, and United States was, that we absolute this word non-violence, which means we don't use any military weapons to fight, because we are the peacemakers, we are people believing in peace. And we make a kind of orthodoxy. This is very typical for our Western thinking, you know, that when we started to believe in something, it became absolute, like not violence. So every use of violence is a kind of evil thing. That was the interpretation we had over the Gandhi words, yes? But this was not a spirit of Hindu or Eastern tradition, and even Christian tradition. When we go deeply into the studies, you know, we always remember the Christian commandment 6, you know, don't kill, which became also the absolute. But in the old Hebrew and Christian tradition, this commandment had like 2 meanings, you know, 2 words in language, you know, to be murderous, to murder somebody, which is forbidden and which is a sin, and to kill, which was something different. The knight, the soldier fighting the war could kill, and it wasn't breaking the 6th commandment. Because you kill in self-defense, for example, yeah? Because you kill for the good of, to make justice or to defend people which don't have any guilt, yeah? And we somehow erase in this absolute statement, don't kill, also these 2 meanings of these words. So it's very typical for our Western way of thinking that we tend to be orthodox in very many issues, yeah, like vegetarianism, for example. And we always believe that it came to us from this Eastern Buddhist traditions and so on, that they don't eat meat because they value the life of animals, who has the spirit, the soul, and everything. But when you go deeply into that tradition, you suddenly discover that this is no orthodoxy for these people. Of course, they use it for diet, but they understand that also plants, also other beings have souls, and and feelings. You know, like our biology is more and more to give plants also this identity of feeling something, communicating, you know, having. So you also kill the plants. So suddenly your absolute vegetarianism in ethical things, what does it mean? Yes, it is limited only to another kind of a half-truth. Yes, because the real situation is that we eat life. And the most important thing is what you do inside yourself, towards the animals, towards plants, to coexist, to build a habitatus with them, rather to have, you know, this absolute truth that don't eat meat. Yeah, for example, don't do that. So it's always about that, and it's always about ahimsa. Yeah, using this word, no violence. Yeah, it is ahimsa. Remember that ahimsa is to be as efficient as is possible in a concrete situation to fight the evil. And how you will do it, you know, it's open to different circumstances, but also it is open to your inner development as a human being. In what purpose and in which power from your inside you take the sword and you use it. If it will be only hatredness, as Gandhi is saying, it will go along with evil. But when you will take the sword for self-defense, or, you know, engage in justice and so on, it will be used in an effective, positive way. So that's the question also we can raise about the culture around we build around nonviolence or behaving, facing the war. Yeah, that culture can play a very decisive role for our decisions in fighting. I'd experienced different wars in my life. The most important war for, you know, like I was in your age at that time and initiated just at that moment Borderland Foundation, and the war in the former Yugoslavia started at the beginning of 90s. Yeah. I experienced the war in Ukraine, in Indonesia and some other corners of the world. But always the question was, imagine the situation that we are in Sarajevo, you know, in the siege of Sarajevo, the city is with this Karadzic military army, and they are just shooting to the citizens of the city, you know, from the hills around. 1 month, half a year, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years of siege. Only after 3 years, we Westerners, you know, international community decided that we will use, or it was not even decided by the Council of Security, you know, or European anybody, only NATO did these decisions that we will intervene, that we will attack. 1 day of airstrikes, stop the war, stop the killing. Why we waited 3 years for that? When you hear the answers, very often it was not a strategic, you know, or security thing. It was the culture behind that. We were very hesitant in the West to use arms to intervene. Yeah, because we believed in peace. So our strategy at that time was to give humanitarian help to the victims, send medicines, you know, send no arm. Because we believe that in our European peace world and values, it is against our values to help somebody with military weapons at that time. I don't know if you remember, if you know, it was an embargo or to help Bosniaks in Yugoslavia with the weapon at that time. And 10,000s of people died in Sarajevo and Bosnia over these 3 years. And there is no other answer and explanation of this waiting than culture. That something was, blocking us to do what should be done. Because we had this mindset inside that better not to take weapons and help with that. Yes, that, okay, we are human beings, so we will help with humanitarian aid, but anything else is not in our competence or responsibility at that time. And being inside, as I was working at that time with Tadeusz Mazowiecki, who was, the representative of international community for former Yugoslavia. At that time, it was very hard for the people to hear that, that we will not help you with military weapons. Because what it meant in, sub narratives, that you barbarians, you are fighting using, this war and weapons and so on, but we are civilized people. We can help you with humanitarian aid, but nothing else. And this contradiction between being, in peace country, in peace Europe, peaceful Europe, being civilized, and then to see others, engage in the war because there was no other way for them to exist, was really unhuman, in fact. Yeah, because and very, very hard to to accept for the victims. In the situation with Ukraine, there's a big change, also not absolute, that the world is helping with military aid, with weapons to Ukraine, with some exceptions of, the sky is still not saved over the Ukraine. What would be from the first day of the war, the NATO or international community will decide that they will, guard the sky, yeah? So it's always these decisions, which are somehow rooted in the way how we understand our values, how we understand our responsibility, how we understand our presence as human beings. That's why I want not to avoid the subject of war and culture. See that this, after many, many years of this, the peace and culture, peace culture, that was the dominant thing in Europe for decades. We were devoted to the peace and culture. But in meantime, at the same time, we equipped with military arms the dictators like Putin in a full way. So the peace culture didn't stop giving arms to dictators because it was a business. It was the belief that the peace in Europe is built on the trade or the free market of the business. That's how we believe that peace could be achieved. Yeah, we developing the economy. Yeah, build European Union as economical project, then political project, and we will have this eternal peace. But at the same time, as I mentioned the war was all over. in the colonies and so on, till the Chechnya, till Syria. You know, Germany and France equipped Putin after 2014. Yes, after annexation of Crimea, after Donbass, after Syria, they still were selling the weapons to Russia. And still it was, you know, this belief that we keeping and we are safeguard of peaceful Europe. But in the cost, in what kind of cost? You know, the war was, of course, far away, somewhere, you know, in the world. But the victims of the war, it was our responsibility very much. So that's why I have the problem, you know, with this term peace culture. And I want to talk about war culture. To understand that war is with us, and we should find the way to defeat the aggressors and to be victorious. And I think, and this is another dimension and another big thing in the lesson of Ukraine we have today, in my mind, peremocha. You, Ukrainians, put at stake for the first time after many, many years, the peremocha, which means that we understand that only defeating evil, we will survive. We will have freedom and everything else. You see, and here and now, because how it happened with my generation for many, many years, decades, that we were believing in good values like peace, like human rights, like democracy and so on. But at the same time, we were always defeated in all the corners of the world. Yeah, we were on the good side with good values, but defeated. And always it happens, you know, that consensus was, okay, it should be like that because there is no alternative to that. That we should pay the price for the compromise, for conformism and everything, because there is no other way to avoid it, to solve it. And we didn't solve anything, in fact. We were only preparing the ground for these dictators to be stronger. So, and this is also something what can exist in the culture, you know, this belief that the victory is possible only in the other world, in heaven. There is a famous Serbian myth in the mythology, national mythology of Kosovo battle. And now, of course, historians now quarrel who was victorious in the fact of this battle, but the national mythology after that was for many years, and I saw how it is put in the practice in the war in former Yugoslavia, was that we are defeated here and now by other powers, Muslim powers in the Battle of Kosovo, of Sultan powers, but in heaven we will be the winners. And the only way to be the winner in this world is in the heaven. So there is no chance. So that when you read it directly, it means that somehow there is no chance to be a winner here and now in a real life. And so, and because of that, you should make all the kinds of compromises around that. And now we have this this position, which goes like a message to the world from Ukraine that the peremocha is on the stake. When I teach and talk, you know, with students and people in other countries, I even tend to learn them the word peremocha, that it should become international like nonviolence of Gandhi, that they should learn peremocha as something what gives something new and new hope and new value in our life. That the peremocha is on the stake. And of course, telling this here, I understand how risky it is. What is the price of this peremocha? How many people died already? When I was traveling by car yesterday from Poland to Lviv, I was crossing small towns and villages, and on each cemetery I saw fresh graves with Ukrainian flags, understanding that almost each place, each small settlement in Ukraine sacrificed the lives to that war. So the cost is huge of that, but this was and still is the choice you did here, and your people did, and the way we should deal with that, I think, is that we should not only understand that, but we should make it as a value also in other parts of the world, to be part of this struggle, part of this war, to be part that the war in Ukraine is ours, in Poland, in Germany, in United States, means that we also should fight for peremocha, that in our daily decisions, struggles, we should start to believe that maybe there are possibilities to struggle, about the values in direct sense, not saying that it is impossible or for the heaven only. So we are somehow responsible for our own here and today life and decisions. So not to escape from the responsibility of making change and defeat the evil. Another thing, what I see with this culture and war dichotomy is imperial culture, or the way how empire could use culture for their own purpose and benefits. I think, yes, it was yesterday that Pope Francis said, trying to explain why he made this terrible statement about to young Russians in Petersburg, St. Petersburg, that they should be proud of the imperial history of Katerina and Peter and big culture, Russian culture. When journalists asked him yesterday why he said it, in explanation, he uses terms that culture is never imperial. That his belief is that, the beauty of Russian culture is somehow independent from the politics or empire strategies and so on, which I think is the core of the problem, because culture can be used by empire in a very smart way, and to think about how we can counter it. It's tells us a lot about culture as well. One of the way, very simple, how empire is using culture is saying or supporting this statement that culture is marginal. That's how it happened in our liberal democracies. Culture is marginal. When the war in former Yugoslavia ended, and there was, international community table about building the program for revitalization of Yugoslavia after the war, there was no room for culture and education around the table. So culture was not convinced as a player for rebuilding the country after the war, although that war was very often called the culture war in former Yugoslavia. But it very much happened, in the situation in Poland after joining European Union. There was, this claim of receiving support from European Union to revitalize or rebuild Poland after communist time. And very often the culture was, again, not in the budget, not in as an investment position in that sake. So we use mostly this money for building roads in symbolic way. When we have this program for so-called civilizational development, rozwój cywilizacyjny, tak? Civilizational development, our politicians, also from liberal democratic parties like Platforma Obywatelska, Civic Platform, used to say, so first we should engage in building roads. I use it as symbolic, some hard business-oriented things. And now, mostly people use these good roads to leave their regions, their provinces. There is a big gap, empty space, because there is no life in the small regions, no development, because the education is low, there's small numbers of cultural centers and so on and so on. And this is how empire is. So in my reading, you can see Brussels also and European Union as a kind of a bigger brother, giving you money, giving you support. And they did not have interest of supporting our educational process in advance, to invest in education and culture. They liked that, we will have good roads and we will have good opportunities also from people from the West, to make business and so on. But there was no their responsibility about thinking about culture and education. But I think that is how our elites were colonized in the past. That still we have in Poland not this emancipation of political elites to understand that our emancipation is very much about education and culture. Yeah. So they still, they were like taking this cliche, okay, everything is market oriented, everything goes, to the business, to the economy and so on. So we put it on the margins, and that's how empire likes it. Yeah, because the competence of culture is in the center. Yeah, we are transmitters of culture and civilization. So to overcome this discrepancy, is very much to regain the culture as an important field for rebuilding, responsibility, democracy building, and so on. My concern is what will happen in Ukraine after the war. How we can help not to make the same mistakes. As usual, it happens. What will be your, as a society, position about that? That you will hear all the time, okay, culture could be later. There's more urgent things for today and tomorrow. Just wait. It's another kind of marginalization of that. Yeah, we respect culture. Yeah, we like it very much, but it can wait. Don't think about it as an investment. What the Germans used to say, Bildung. That's how they revitalize their country after the war. In Europe, you have a very strong Germany, also in economy, but they invested from the very beginning in culture and education with France together. You know, for example, building the whole network of so-called European houses along the border with France and Germany after 1945. For many years, you know, organic investment in small communities, in regions, you know, for building this spiritual, ethical, moral, that, you know, how you can overcome this engagement in fascism, you know, in Germany without culture. Yeah. Market will not do it. Yeah, so you understand that you should invest very, you know, the salary. I remember, you know, from my discussions with Germans, the salary of the teacher in the 40s in Germany was the same as the director of fabric. Yeah. That's how, in a practical way, they did it. Yeah, the teacher was the really respected, crucial figure for that recovery. Of course, there's another issue, how empire works with culture and making others enslaved, you know, subdue, is a term of the understanding of eternity. What empire is tending to say to us is that we are the people in power, the people building the empire. We are eternal. That there is no other way to be present in this world than ours way. That it means, okay, you can struggle, you can have your ideas, but you are idealist, you are utopian, you are not realist, because the real thing is the power of the empire, and it always was like that, and it will be. So when only you will understand that always was like that the world is built like that, you are enslaved by the empire. And that's the narrative the empire is making on us, you know, putting on us. Why? You are struggling, you have all these revolutions, protests, you know, and everything, but it will sooner or later it will come back to as it was, because there is no alternative to that. And sometimes people, you know, experiencing a lot of suffering, tragedies and so on, start to believe that there is no other way to cope with that we should accept. And it gives us the freedom when you accept the reality as it is imposed on you. There is a book of Gustaw Herling-Grudziński, who was a Gulag prisoner, Polish writer, spending a lot of years, you know, in Gulag in the 40s, and after that he wrote a very famous book, Inny Świat, Other World. And he's describing the meeting with a Russian woman in the Gulag, a friend who was risking his life, renting him, giving him a book of Dostoevsky, Wspomnienia z domu umarłych, you know, remembering of the House of Dead, you know, this novel of Dostoevsky, you know, being in the prison and so on. And when Herling started to read this book in Gulag, you know, he has on the walls of his barrack this graffiti, you know, of former prisoners 20 years ago, 40 years ago, 60 years ago, 100 years ago. There were always prisoners here. There was always empire here putting, enslaved people here. And suddenly he realized that if he will accept this necessity, of being all the time like that, so the world is like that it will all repeat, all the time will repeat itself, and he suddenly feels, oh, I should escape from that because I will be enslaved in the other world, in the inny świat. So the way for him and for his Russian friend, it was a way to feel free. She was reading Dostoevsky like, making free herself. Okay, I'm suffering, but it was always like that. And it will be always like that. So the decision of, putting no, like screaming of hurling, no, I disagree. There is alternative. There is a way of taking responsibility for our own things in our hands. That's how it was, by the way, this shift from, in Greek literature, ancient literature, when you have the Greek tragedy, these masterpieces of Greek tragedy, it is exactly the moment when Europeans started to take the responsibility of their life in their hands. Euripides, Sophocles, they were the first to tell that we are responsible for our lives and we can change everything around. This is culture also. That you find the way of not accepting what they offer you like eternity. Like always it was like that. Timothy Snyder, who wrote the book Unfreedom, the Road to Unfreedom, an excellent book, I recommend you very much. He uses this category of eternity as a political one. As the category, for example, Trump and Putin is taking for their strategies, to make politics eternal, no change. Always was like that. And this is how the empire works with that. And maybe the last point, before I will try to say you some positive and constructive way out of that things, is that what empire is doing with us is making us to believe that culture is like an autonomous kingdom, cut off the real daily life. Our freedom as culture people, as artists, is our individual freedom. We want to have a freedom of speech. We want to have our freedom of the individual expression. That's how the freedom was understood very much in modern culture. And Putin and other empires do not have problems with that. Okay, do what you want, but keep aside the political life. Keep aside the public life. Enjoy your autonomous kingdom. That's fine with me. I'm not about, I'm not concerned about you are anti-Putin or pro-Putin. Doesn't matter for me. What matters for me is that you as a culture people are in an independent, autonomous culture kingdom. And enjoy. Because you can't do anything to change, to be really like a threat to these authoritative governments and dictatorships and so on. So, and this is like I call it like a silent rejection or I lost this, zdrada? Betrayal, thank you. Like a silent betrayal of the Greeks, which was based, you know, the belief of Greeks was based that the beauty, the good, and the truth works together only. There is no good without the beauty. There is no beauty without the good. And there is no truth without good. Kolokagatia, yeah, the unity of these three things. What we did in modern culture, and I think it's something what the lesson of Ukraine today shows us, is that we betrayed this unity. That we easily separating good from beauty. In culture, in art, it happening. To give you an example, Peter Handke, the supporter of Milosevic regime, and, you know, a writer, an Austrian writer, who was saying that Srebrenica probably didn't happen, or who knows who was responsible for Srebrenica, won the Nobel Prize a few years ago. And of course, there were many protests in the world against it, but the explanation of the jury and the defender of Handke was, but why you mixed his political position, his support with Milosevic, with his art of writing? He's a great drama writer. He's a great writer. So we in the free world do not judge people because of the engagement in good or evil, but we judge them on the beauty. And we awarded them as genius of music, philosophy, and other things, and so on. And at that time, when it happened, you know, it was a Srebrenica case, it was a former Yugoslavia war, but there were some protests against Handke, but they were somehow smashed on the world scene. You know, there was enough power to defend him as an autonomous art writing creator. But I wonder if it could be happened today. Thanks to Ukraine, I think. What you and your writers, your artists, your people of culture did in the world is putting again this question: should we make you know, the separateness of these two things, three things, or it works together? For people experiencing the war, this is exactly what happened with me in Sarajevo and in Bosnia. I lost this belief of autonomous art culture kingdom at that moment, very immediately. When you are in the center of the war, experiencing it, you can't divide these things. That's what war is doing with you in a positive way. There are many negative things about the war, terrible things. But there are some positive things. In moral sense, war is making you unable to differentiate between these two things. Yeah, that you again feel it as kalokagatos. It goes together. I was in Russia, I think it was 2008, when they announced this Kandinsky Prize, you know, the main prize for the artists in Russia. And at the very beginning, this award was given to Belayev, the fascist artist in Russia. And he used even the fascist chauvinistic symbolic in his art pieces, in his pictures. And there were some protests in Moscow against this decision. But in jury, there were people not only from Russia, there were people from Guggenheim Foundation from New York, from Deutsche Bank, from Germany, and so on. And the way they defended the decision was, there is a freedom of speech. Why you want us, you protesters, to deal with these political issues and so on public issues? There is an autonomous artistic way to do things. And Gelayev very quickly became, supporter of Dugin and Putin fascism and so on. But that's how the Western culture is, unarmed in a way, facing such kind of situation, and even without bad intentions, supporting the fascism and growing such kind of ideologies and so on. So again, I think this is a war, the Ukrainian lesson to us. And when I talk about this now, when, when you people from Ukraine, mostly, but it may, started to put in question the presence of Russian culture artists, writers, singers, conductors, and so on, suddenly words started to think about the problem behind that, not solving immediately, not being, convinced immediately, but at least there is something you from Ukraine put in the center of this discussion as a problem. Okay, and now to put this reflection toward the practice. So I discuss how culture and war are connected, and some critical views on the culture, and how it is easy to make culture supporter for imperial ideologies and strategies. The question is what we should do. What could be the answer to that? What me personally, but you as a future humanist, culture practices, artist, academics, what we can do facing these issues? One of my answers is the concept of small center of the world. That's the title of my book. Olena was mentioning, but in short, to explain you the philosophy, the core philosophy of this concept is that the empire, the center, the big number, that's how empire is doing in that world, how the evil is working in the world is in big numbers, in big organism, that believe, it's like the biblical Goliath, that we like the big, we like the center, we like everything what goes, beyond people's heads, in something what is huge, media-oriented, having impact to the crowds of people. When we, as a culture people, as a humanist, when we start to believe in that way, that everything what makes sense in our activity concerns also big numbers, big events, big festivals, then we are lost in the hands of Goliath. He likes it. He don't fear against another Goliath who we want to build against him. The fear of big Goliath is about the David, the small man. Simple, honest, not having this involvement and engagement in a center-oriented, big number-oriented things, being free out of that. That's why I think about small centers of the world. The first thing is that they are small, that we start again to respect small. not being afraid that even if you are meeting like here, it's a big audience, but it's still a small group of people. But we can do something. And it makes sense that we share our ideas here. And maybe a small step of some practical things will come out of that. It makes sense. It is real. It is real, and something very important that you will start care about your playground for your children around your house. That you will invest some good willings, but also support to the kindergarten, to the level of your school education. In a small culture, practices and so on. It makes sense because small, only small, it is paradoxical, but only small can change the world. And usually it happened in the history. When you look about the change makers, it always started with the small things. And believe in the sense of the small, which is very uncomfortable in the world of market economy, of globalization of the world, and so on and so on. But that's how these new powers of empire, of a Goliath, works in that world. To give you untrust, to discredit the small. This is the winning of them. When you will lost your belief in small, you are in their hands. Center. Here in Szeptycki building in Yuku, we can be in the center of the world. This is our center. It's not necessary to look around to some bigger Oxford or Sorbonne centers. Here we can do everything best, and with agreement with our ambitions. Here we can do it. Here is the center. In a small town we are living, in a small district of the city. We can build a center, and it will be the center most important, like an axis mundi for our activities. You can do I am coming to from a small town, Sejny, 6,000 people. But over the 30 years of working with people, we built some kind of trust that we can make in this small town the most important things in the world, if we want, and have with us, the most interesting people from the world to work with us on that. But if it is a center, it of the world, it means that it makes you somehow engage in something broader than your particular things and problems in your community. The world is your challenge. You want to change the world. Don't afraid to change it, that it is, marginal, that it is in the province, so it's the corner, and without any influence on impact on the world. In contrary, it should be open in the ways that your rootedness, because center is also something like being rooted, like Greek oikos, rebuilding, these community polis around you. But it should be open to the world. Yes, it should be, co-responsible, co-independent with the others, with ecology issues, with human issues, and so on. That's my answer in practice, to give the response, the counter argument to these powers of evil and empire in the world. And maybe on that point, I will stop and open the discussion.
Thank you so much for your so important and I think thought-provoking speech. For me, it's not even a lecture, because lecture is, from some point, it's like sharing knowledge, but that was also sharing the very process of self-reflection. I remember the concept which was proposed by anthropologist Clifford Geertz, risky thinking. That is about self-reflection and readiness to be changed in a process of reflection. Yes, I'm almost ready to open our Q&A section. We have not a lot of time. We have about 10 minutes. So I propose to collect maybe for the very beginning 3 questions, and then we will see if we will still have some time, we will continue. So I see the first one, the second one, and the third one, yes. And then, okay, one more circle.
So good afternoon, Kshishtof. It's a very big pleasure to meet you. And I have a question about our cultural advocacy and diplomacy, because as we can see, our brand of Ukraine is it has a good impact on how others see us. So what about our cultural diplomacy? Because how to make our soft power explain our intentions harder, because it's about a long-term run. So what are the key actions to make bigger changes, even in small actions like you mentioned before? Thank you.
Please, for the next question.
Okay, good afternoon. Thank you for your lecture. And my question is, what can we do as students, as Ukrainian students, to make Western people accept, like you said, war culture and not peace culture?
One here.
Good evening. My question is almost the same. Why Europe can't change its mindset about non-violence environment, and what can be done in order them to understand that the war is something that is always with us?
Okay, I will respond to all these 3 questions, which has something together. I think the first, I would say, about your narrative to the world, which is something of crucial importance. And from the beginning of this war, I understand that Ukrainians and friends of mine feel this responsibility after many years of being silent under the empire and, having the voice taken out, that we want to say in our names and in our view of our experience. And it is, I believe, very powerful and new thing that suddenly we have the voice of Ukraine. And there's growing interest of Ukrainian books, literature, artists, people taking part in the discussion. But that's, I think, what should be even stronger and stronger. But the next stage of the answer, of your answer, would be what you will manage to do here and now in your circumstances, and how you can put this experience, this responsibility you have toward the sacrifice of life during the war and anything else, that how you will put it into the practice here in Ukraine, changing the world from your small centers here. And it will be another step, I think, and crucial. What I mean by that is, should it be, because the problem we had in Central Eastern Europe, in Poland after 1989, in short, was that we were more or less mimicking the West, that we took this position that everything was solved and, good in the West, so we should somehow replicate in our ground, in Poland, in Czech, you know, Romania, and so on, the models from the West. I think you are here in a different position. Your answer will be not replicating. Your answer will be finding new ways, new practices, new ideas. That's how I think our cooperation could develop, and how we can build a new Central Europe, for example. It's another discussion, you know, that we have something here in Ukraine, in Romania, in Poland, in Lithuania, something together to, as an answer, we can give to the world. So not only, so you are the leaders now, but I see it that we can build not only the solidarity around the immigrants from Ukraine in this part of Europe, but the solidarity of giving new ideas and practices. And that's how I would see also the cultural diplomacy you are asking, that we are some, and I would say it is an expectation, very interesting, from the West, because West has less and less answers to the problems. This is a big crisis of values in the West. What we thought about, you know, this non-violence, peace policy, and so on. It is over, but there is nothing replacing it in a positive way. So it is a huge vacuum now to fulfill with something new, and it is in your hands. Yeah, we can take it as not mimicking, not taking, and you was absolutely right. Coming here, I didn't come with already, you know, concept and ideas. It's really, I put myself also coming to Ukraine in a position of, you know, opening for something I never thought and thought before. Yes, that the situation, the tragedy of Ukraine, challenging me not to replicate something I know from the past. Yeah, I'm challenged by you also to do new things, to develop new reflection around this. So that would be, I think, the answer. And also, you look about our language. It is our prison, the language. You know, I'm still struggling with things like, because does it happen that Ukraine answer with violence to the violence? Or the self-defense is not a violence. But in our language, look, we have this violence to violence. You took weapon in your hands, you use violence. But for me, it's not a definition of violence. You are not violating anything, defending yourself. So it's all the time this work step by step, you know, also changing our language categories and prisons, you know, that what I tell you about killing or not killing, yes, that we are Christians, so we do not kill. It's not working like that. Yeah, it's half truth, and we should understand and go more deeply in reflecting on the languages, values we had now. So it's a challenge of new dictionary, you know, new language we will use also for our practices. Very much.
Thank you so much. We still have several minutes for one more session for 3 questions. If you're ready to ask, yes or no, please. Yeah, 1. So I'm still looking for some more questions.
Hi, do you think it is possible to stop wars with war culture? And if not, then does it even make sense to like promote it instead of peace culture?
I simply believe that only way to stop the war is to be aware that it exists, that it works like an arm of evil, and not reject it, not escape from this knowledge. So it's that's the reason I'm putting, you know, I embracing war in the organism of culture. It's part of us. This is like in medicine, you sometimes, you know, this way of healing you is to take your sickness into your body and healing it from inside. So, because when you will pretend that there is no war, that, the mission is only about peace and so on and so on, you lost this possibility that you will overcome it, from its side. So that's, I think, the weakness and kind of escapism we practice, this kind of comfort zones. So we live in peace, we build culture, peace culture, and so on. So we don't engage, in such things. We are humanists. We had a discussion in Poland with the philosopher when, there was an action to raise money for buying a drone for the Ukrainian army, which I was involved also in that. But we were attacked by our friends, humanists from philosophy department, that how you can raise money for drone, for the weapon, being humanist. That we are anti-Putin, of course. We are pro-Ukrainian, of course. But we have problem with raising money for the drone. Yes, you understand this difference. So no, it is inside. It is part of us. This kind of support and engagement and so on. Because otherwise you are it is a kind of a betrayal for your humanity. That's how I understand it, that you leave your partners, your Ukrainians behind, on this edge of, being, engaged in military conflict, and it is not ours. No, it is our war. Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much. And as I see, we are limited by time, so we have to stop here, but not to end here, because we'll discuss many of your ideas within our course. At least the basic idea that people are created by culture or cultures, but culture it's also created by people. And that is also about being responsible. So and the last thing I would like to say, that is about how the very idea of this lecture appeared. At the very beginning, I also asked Kshistov to send me an extract of this lecture, very short description of this lecture. And it was written in English, but only one word was written in Ukrainian, and it was the word перемога. So I would like to conclude this lecture with this one word as an international one, перемога. So thank you again, and we are looking forward to your next lecture for our students at Ukrainian Catholic University. Thank you.
Слава Україні!